Welcome to another CHRO Conversation hosted by the Center for Executive Succession at the Darla Moore School of Business. I'm your host, Anthony Nyberg, and today we are speaking with Adrian Holt, the Senior Vice President and Chief Human Resources Officer for Eastman, a Fortune 500 specialty chemical company with more than 14,000 employees. Adrian previously served as the CHRO of Wireco World Group. Adrian also serves on the boards of Johnson City Boys and Girls Club and is the former chair of the Regal and Emery Center for Human Resources Research. Adrian, thank you very much for coming down here. You've been such a great friend to the program, to our students, and to me. So I really appreciate you coming down here again.
Thank you.
As a specialty chemical company, can you share a little bit about how Eastman helps people from so many different backgrounds and doing different functions really work cohesively to drive business success?
I think the first thing that you have to do is think about the last part of it, which is the business success, the goals that you're trying to achieve. All of the employees, all the team members, right from the frontline employees up to the senior leadership, need to have a common idea of what those goals are and what success looks like. And once we have that, and Eastman has been particularly successful in doing that over the past couple of years, in communicating those goals more clearly, I think at that point you can start to talk about inclusion. And inclusion has been a huge focus for Eastman over the last 2 or 3 years. And as we've moved and evolved through the inclusion and diversity process, we have an inclusion scorecard, which is part of our bonus system, and we assess on a quarterly basis, and all employees have the ability to contribute to that inclusion scorecard. And we monitor the success of that inclusion scorecard through regular surveys with all employees. But key, when we talk about inclusion for Eastman, it's the opportunity for every employee to feel heard at work, and feel able to contribute and be their full selves at work. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges that we have, is everybody feeling, one, that they're fully connected to the strategy and what that they do every day contributes to that business success, but also that their contribution is seen and that they can be their true selves and be heard.
So that's, of course, a massive challenge for our whole country. So if you get that figured out, that would be great. It'd be nice if you could share that with all of us. But I really like your focus on thinking about the strategy and helping everybody. So is that one of the keys, that you're helping everyone really understand that mission and so that people are moving in the same direction?
Yeah, Eastman has a huge focus on sustainability and the circular economy. And one of the challenges that we have is not all our employees work closely with sustainability and the circular economy. We have a large number of employees who are working on those plans, working in those plans, working in construction or technology. But a lot of employees are only very tangentially connected to those parts of our strategy. But there's a huge core of Eastman, which is very profitable and contributes to society in a hugely material way. And so what we have to do is ensure that, on a differentiated basis, all employees see their connection not only with the circularity strategy, but with all aspects of Eastman's strategy. Because it's very easy for employees to feel detached if they're not working on perhaps the latest and most fashionable area.
And you're going to be speaking with our students right after this, and I've heard you talk to them in the past and about the importance of things like resiliency. Can you share a little bit about why that is? It's a topic we're hearing from everybody now. So why is that so important in the business world?
I think it's always been important. I think there's a lot of talk at the moment about latest generations or the generation coming through COVID and saying that particular generations need to be more resilient or have more grit, or that we all, in this environment have to have more resilience given the chaos that we've been managing since around about 2019 with so many different stages of the economic cycle and COVID itself. For me, the need for resilience has always been there, and it's not just about the employee. I was reading a lot about resilience over the last few weeks, and one of the key issues for me was building resilience, and the need for resilience is for the employee, it's for the colleagues, the peers, but it's also for the leaders. And there's so many things when you think about resilience, when you think about the ability to bounce back after personal challenges, the ability to thrive during times of change, the ability to adapt to new technology, or to receive feedback, critical feedback, or to bounce back from failure, because we all fail in the workplace from time to time. And when you think about what resiliency looks like, it's those things that I just talked about. How do you build the strength personally to be able to do all of those things? It's about building networks. It's about having self-awareness. It's about having realistic goals and realistic work-life balance. But all of those things, it's too much to ask an employee to develop them alone. We as leaders, we as peers, we as employees as well have to take responsibility for ourselves at all levels, all have to work together to ensure that team members can build that resiliency and then show that resiliency in the workplace. And when we do, that we're recognized for it. I mean, at the end of the day, companies have to make a profit and they have to get certain work done every day. And we need our employees to work with us to get that work done. So I gave the example the other day to an employee when they were saying, well, does that mean I'm expected to work when I'm sick? And I said, no, but you're expected to ensure that when you call in sick, that if there's an urgent deadline or there's something that really needs doing, or other colleagues will be overly loaded or whatever, that people know, that your boss knows, and that it can be delegated elsewhere. They went, well, yeah, I can work with that. And I said, and that's all that we're asking, is that it's that sense of responsibility that resiliency enables.
So there's a strong link there between resiliency and responsibility?
Yes, I think that resiliency enables us to take that responsibility. I think that's all that companies and employers are asking for and leaders are asking for. It is not that employees are bulletproof or somehow work harder than they have in previous generations, but that they just continue to take responsibility and ensure that the necessary work, the necessary tasks, those key moments, are covered and get done.
So as you mentioned briefly, that some people are pointing to this generation maybe as needing this even more than the rest, although I think you highlighted that we've always needed this sort of resiliency. Do you have any suggestions for us for how we can teach it better, how we can do it, how we can help students get it better, either in our homes or in our master's programs or our undergraduate programs?
I think talking about resiliency without talking about the underlying ways that it appears, when I was just talking about bouncing back from certain challenges and thriving in times of chaos, and talking about resiliency without talking about how we develop it, with building strong networks and support groups and having realistic goals, isn't helpful. Simply saying, as you would probably be aware, that we need employees to be more resilient. Well, yes, I think everybody wants to be more resilient, but I think we have to give people the tools. We have to explain what it looks like. And as I said, we have to, as leaders and peers and employees, take responsibility for supporting others.
You mentioned the strong networks a couple of times, and I have to say that's not one that I have thought about when I've thought about resilience. I've gone dark, I have to say, when I think about how to teach resilience. But how does having that strong network really influence the ability to be more resilient?
For me, it's about strength and power that comes from those networks and that support system that you have. When I had interns from the school at the Eastman during the summer, one of the focuses that we had with each of them was how are you going to build networks when you're here? How are you going to build those support systems? And we put mentors in place, as all of the employers do. We also ensure that everybody's there supporting the interns, and the interns know that one of their biggest jobs is to build those support networks while they're at the employer during the internship. Because for us, when you're doing an internship with Eastman, those are the first 2 months of your career with Eastman. So that's the time to build your networks. When you get a bit of negativity over a presentation or otherwise, and we all do, it is great to go to your support network and say, hey, this happened. And your support network said, yeah, it happened to me last week. It was better this week. Or that particular leader that you worked with, they're particularly difficult, or they had a bad day, or they're under pressure or whatever. And so that support network helps give us the context and the balance that we need to kind of bounce back from those setbacks that we get every day in the workplace. 99% of the setbacks I've had in my career were not personal. They were not aimed at me. They were more to do with the context that I was working in, or the leader having challenges of their own. And kind of having a bad reaction on me that day. And my support networks, I think more than anything else, gave me the strength to get through that.
And that development, those development opportunities that you help create, even for the interns, certainly helped explain why our students love coming to Eastman. It's really an employer of choice, I have to say here.
It's a huge compliment, and we really enjoy having the interns, and they do great work for us. And even now, the interns continue to do great work for us after they've left. So
we don't want to hear that part.
No,
they're supposed to be back in the class.
No, we're very grateful for it.
So you have employees doing a wide variety of jobs all across Eastman. How do you ensure that talent is really recognized and nurtured and developed across all of those different areas?
So I want to be very open. One of my first epiphanies when I took the CHRO role about 17 months ago was I was asked to recruit a new vice president of talent. And when I went to the recruiter, they said, we need to recruit someone from an academy company. And I looked at them over the video and over the Teams meeting, and I said, I want to be that. I want to be an academy company. How do I become an academy company? It was like some comedy show. And he just looked at me and said, well, these are the things you need. You need to be famous for leadership development. You need to be known for talent development, for training, for all of these things. And went through a whole litany of things that we would have to put in place. And I said, how long is it going to take to do that? And they said, generally about 3 to 5 years before you see any true difference. And I said, okay, I'm going to do it. And so I went to the executive team and the board. They gave me a budget. They looked at me questioningly, as you can imagine. Can we just go for okay? You're being very ambitious in your first month here. I said, well, no, this is what we need. So my initial name for it was Eastman Academy. My team persuaded me that Eastman U was a much cooler word. So we've put together this huge multi-million-dollar training academy called Eastman U, and it is there to assess, to drive, to identify and to train our employees, not only across the things within their development plans and differentiated development plans for the jobs that they aspire to, but also going forward, the things that they just want to learn. And when we talk about how we engage and retain our talent, it's not just about developing them for the jobs that we want. It's also about keeping them really excited about what they get from Eastman, about the employer value proposition from Eastman. And for us, that's so much more than the job, the benefits, the salary. It is the opportunity to be part of a true learning organization and to develop as a true leader. And in the future, what I want is Eastman to be one of those academy companies, and I've spoken to employees across the world, and our employees to be poached by other companies. If we can't develop them fast enough, if we can't promote them fast enough, I want other companies to know Eastman as a true talent developer. And it's working very well. There's a huge amount of excitement about it. But as you can imagine, only 15 months in, we've achieved nothing yet apart from a lot of excitement and a lot of employees accessing training all over America.
And a cool name. Got that good.
Yes, I still prefer Eastman Academy.
So you started by talking about the importance of really driving business success and thinking about the organization's full strategy. Why does being an academy company, how does that help you get there? Or why is that important to you, at least?
Eastman is a specialty chemical company. I think Eastman's a wonderful employer. I think the chemicals industry is incredibly attractive and very exciting. I've been working in it for over 20 years. But not everybody is as excited at working as a chemical company as I am. And there are many industries and many competitors for talent across all industries. And some of them may pay more, some of them may be in a startup mode. For me, you have to have an exciting value proposition. Now, we have exciting compensation and benchmark benefits and all these things, but you also have to have something. And what Eastman needs in order to drive such a demanding sustainability and circular economy strategy is we need to have the best leaders. And the only way we're going to get the best leaders is if we develop them ourselves and promote from within and are able to attract the very best of talent. And being that leadership academy, I believe, will be a huge magnet for the very best talent, and already has been when I've talked a bit about this in college campuses and also in interviews.
Helping develop leaders and driving talent, that sort of thing. What else can HR do to really drive business success as we go forward?
There's two answers to that question. The first answer is so many things haven't changed. HR's role in many ways, the basic role is still there of helping the businesses drive business success through identifying, recruiting, retaining, motivating. and developing their talent. That hasn't changed. That's been there since I got into HR 20 years ago, and I'm sure was in HR before that. What we have to accept now is we have a very dynamic economic environment, very dynamic workplace environment where so many things have changed only in the last 4 years. And our employees have had to deal with, and we talked about resiliency, so much chaos and so many changes. And we have the adventures of generative AI coming in, and that threatens to disrupt much of the workplace that we have and the roles that we have in place currently. And for me, HR's role going forward still is in the basics of around developing and attracting talent, but it is also in helping leaders navigate the chaos that they have in front of them to ensure that through strategic workforce planning and through the use of dynamic targets and performance management and training, that we have the capabilities and skills in place much quicker going forward. For me, one of the biggest challenges that I've had when I've gone through employee surveys is employees finding themselves in our strategy. What do I do? What is it that I do that contributes to the achievement of that strategy? And so many companies, and myself to some extent too in the past, I've simply responded by repeating the strategy, sometimes in a louder voice, and finding that kind of tangential link that they have, that their role has to the strategy. But recently I've had a lot of feedback and say, why aren't you reimagining the roles so it's much easier for people to see their link with the strategy? These roles have been in place 20, 30, 40 years in some places, barely changed in terms of the job descriptions. And so that reimagining of role profiles, job descriptions, activities every day, as we go through this and looking at the strategy and going back from the strategy to the roles, I think our employees going forward, and I think HR has got a huge role in this, need to be able to see that link with the strategy much more clearly without so much kind of explanation.
So that is really interesting that because we always talk about HR really helping build strategy, achieve strategic outcomes that are desirable, et cetera. But I don't often hear people talk about the importance of HR helping everybody else understand where they fit in strategy. So it's brilliant, I think.
I don't know if it's brilliant. At this stage, it's very much seeing the gap. I think that's the key role often for HR leaders and HR generally, is seeing the gap and helping leaders identify ways to fill it. And that's the gap that we see through employee surveys and feedback. And right now, leaders are very excited. We've got a lot of work to do, and we've only just started in terms of reimagining the Eastman workplace and roles in order how we more clearly attach our employees to the strategy and how they deliver that strategy.
And as a CHRO, can you share a little bit about what, if anything, your engagement with the board of directors is?
It's funny you say this, Anthony. I was just having a conversation with one of your alums and coming today and speaking on professional development, but also doing this interview, gave me an idea that I'm going to do these CHRO deep dives with my team, because 17 months in, I'm still learning what being a CHRO is. No one teaches you how to be a CHRO before you are one. You just go from vice president normally to CHRO, and it's an adventure every day, every week, every month, for at least the first year and beyond, as all of these things come along. And so for me, when I look at the annual cycle, when you start the year with the CDNA and the proxy, and you're working with the board to take them through the proxy. Then you go through succession planning, and CEO planning meetings, succession planning meetings with the board over the early spring and summer. And then as you get later on in the year, and you're talking about further succession, talent development, maybe choosing a compensation consultant or confirming the choice of a compensation consultant. You've already gone through the annual general meeting and say on pay. You may, some companies may be doing shareholder outreach sessions, again with the board and with investors. And then going into the latter part of the year, looking at the bonus factors and calculating all of the compensation as you go through the end of the year. And there are the one-offs, with the recruitments of new directors, and working with the nomination and governance committee. The interaction with the board is constant, and it's a build up to every single meeting as you're preparing all of the papers to be submitted to the board for every meeting. And then you get into the meeting and the high intensity of that meeting, and there's small come down for a couple of weeks, and then you start again to go for the next board meeting. And what I've explained to my team is I'm going to start to kind of teach classes with my team, not as a teacher, but more of a kind of, this is what I experienced this month. So that as my team move towards being my successor in the years to come, rather than being surprised by all of these one-off activities that I get as CHRO, they've heard about them from me. They've heard about my challenges as a newbie going into them, and maybe they can help me, the second time around.
So you touched on your first 17 months here, and interacting with the board, I'm taking as one of those things that you weren't fully expecting, at least at the intensity that it was. Are there other learnings that you pull out from, or things that were surprising as you stepped into that role? People often think of it as just the next increment. You've had plenty of promotions throughout your life, but the way we hear it from many CHROs is that this is a little bit different jump.
The board exposure is a huge part of the job. The other huge part of the job, which is very different than what you had before, or a much bigger proportion, is there's much less HR. As a vice president of HR, still 60 or 70% of the work that you're doing every day is pure HR. By the time you get to a CHRO role, it's a much lower point. You are a corporate leader. Often as a CHRO, you're responsible for a number of other areas. I'm responsible for global security, medical, aviation, and HR, and a number of other smaller areas. So that was one of the key learnings for me about a CHRO role, is I don't get to be a true HR person anymore so much. I'm much more of a corporate leader. There are roles in the community. There are roles in economic development agencies that you have to take on behalf of the company. There's so many roles in addition to that HR role. But also, if you're going to be effective as a CHRO, you have to delegate. And I promoted really well as I moved up to CHRO, and I'm able to delegate fully to the team that I've put in place. And that's the key moment. It took me about 6 months to effectively step away. Not because they couldn't do the job that I'd put them in, but because I loved it so much and I missed it terribly, and it made me happy and I felt important doing it. And so after that 6 months, I think I was able to let go and become a true CHRO. But I think only 17 months in, I'm a long way from being a fully operational CHRO. I'm just enjoying every minute of it.
And related to this, including the skills that were really helpful to get you up here, what are the skills you're looking for in new HR professionals that you say, either these are things you have to have, or we really are aspiring to have you come in the door before we put you in our new academy, or you?
It's a really interesting question. I think every leader, and it's something I coach my own team, you have to have your own principles when it comes to hiring. You have to have the things that are incredibly important to you in hiring, and in choosing whether to say, okay, I'm going to bring this person in, because this person could be right fit for Eastman, is going to be right fit for the role. And it's very difficult on a 45-minute interview or an hour interview, often virtual these days as well. And so having those key hiring principles that are important to you, very, very important. And I've learned and copied them over the years from others. And for me, it is the comfort to lead. I need to see the comfort to lead. I need to see adaptability and demonstrated adaptability. I need to see courage to manage uncertainty, and the ability to take data, present it, and use it to either influence decisions or take decisions. Because I work in science, I work in the chemical industry. So the people I'm trying to convince often are engineers or are chemists, but are otherwise scientifically based. So if you go to them with anecdotes or themes or theories, without going to them with data and without analytics, you won't convince them. And so that's very important to me when I'm recruiting HR professionals at any level, is that they're comfortable with data and they're comfortable using that data to influence and take decisions. One of the things I'd said to people probably back in 2020 is the people who will thrive in this level of uncertainty are the best managers of chaos, because chaos is the way it's going to be for a while, and it has been, and it hasn't dropped off too much. And even now I see, having hired so many people, including from the school, those who are the best at managing levels of chaos are the ones who are doing best in this environment. And it's part of the resiliency that we talked about earlier, but it's part of actually enjoying a state where everything is changing from day to day. Nothing stays the same. And there are disruptive technologies, and there are disruptive external contexts and environments that are influencing everything we do. To just give you one particular example, I was told yesterday that in 2030, we're only going to have 75% of the engineers that we need in America. So there'll be a 25% shortage between supply and demand on engineers in America. So immediately what that took me to is, how do I plan for that? How do I make sure that I have all those engineers in place? But more importantly, come 2020, how do I make sure that they don't leave me and go somewhere else, because someone else is going to pay whatever they have to do to get them, because you can't run a business without engineers. That's the level of disruption that we're dealing with. When I look back, I didn't have that problem in Eastman between the years until the year of 2020. And now I'm looking forward to 2030, and the gap is 25%. If that was the only gap that HR was seeing right now and had to fill, I'd be happy. But I see those gaps everywhere across our business and across the businesses of our peers and competitors.
Adrian, as always, it is a true delight and treat for me. So thank you for spending some time speaking with me, and thank you for coming down here.
Thank you.
You just listened to another CHRO conversation. Today, Adrian Holt of Eastman shared his views regarding some of the unique challenges that exist for HR in the rapidly changing specialty chemical industry. As we see, once again, HR leaders must be creative, courageous, and understand the strategic goals of the organization. On behalf of all of us who are associated with the Master of Human Resources program and the Center for Executive Succession here at the University of South Carolina, thank you for joining us.